All right. Well, welcome everybody to Morro Coast Audubon Society's virtual monthly community program for December 19th, 2022. I'm Judy Newhouser, president of Morro Coast Audubon Society. Our program tonight is the compilation of the results from the Morro Coast Audubon Society's 69th annual Christmas bird count. It's a long time. That's longer than I've been alive. I do have a few announcements before we start. Let me talk for a moment about upcoming community programs. There is no community program in January. Instead, as I'm sure most, if not all of you know, January is the Morro Bay Bird Festival from January 13th through the 16th. And many of our members are involved as planners, organizers, field trip leaders, presenters, or all of the above. I trust you will all have an exceptional festival this year, the first in-person festival since 2019. I think we're all pretty excited. So the next community program for Morro Coast Audubon will be on February 20th, and it's a presentation by Dan Robinette, who is the senior biologist, coastal program leader for Point Blue Conservation Science Research along the Central Coast. He works out of Vandenberg. It should be a really informative program, and it will be just in time for any of you who would like to join up as volunteers for the Seabird Survey this spring and summer. I trust all of you know by this point that all of our virtual community programs are available for on-demand viewing on our YouTube channel. You go to our website, click on the YouTube icon in the upper right-hand corner, and you can select any one that we've had. They're all there, so you and your friends worldwide can enjoy these programs at your leisure. Since we can no longer pass around our tin pails as we used to do on in-person meetings, for donations at our monthly programs, consider this the virtual passing of the pail. We still have costs associated with these outstanding presentations, even though they are virtual. Please remember to take a moment sometime in the next couple of days to make a donation to Morro Coast Audubon. Not only do we provide high-quality programs such as tonight's, but we sponsor research on shorebirds, condors, pelicans, black oyster catchers. We maintain the 32-acre Sweet Springs Nature Preserve, the Audubon Overlook on 4th Street. We provide high-quality birds, programs on birds in local elementary schools, and we advocate for birds locally, statewide, nationally, and internationally. You can find our website link in the chat tonight. Please consider a donation to Morro Coast Audubon. We depend on your generosity to carry out our important mission for birds. So, on to tonight's program. This is the program in which we make some very special presentations. The first one this evening is the awarding of the Libbie Agran Scholarship that Morro Coast Audubon Society awards each year to a Cuesta College student who has been identified by her or his professors as showing great promise as an up-and-coming scholar, activist, advocate for study and preservation of the Earth's ecology. The scholarship is made possible by an ongoing donation from Libbie Agran, who encourages you to join her in funding perhaps even more students who are pursuing studies in ecological sciences. So at this point, Ethan, I'm going to ask you to unmute, please. Excellent. And was Silvio Favoretto able to make it tonight? Yes, I see him as a co-host. Silvio, would you also please unmute?
Here we are.
Excellent. All right. Well, it is with great pleasure that this scholarship we are awarding to Ethan Linias. Lori and Silvia, or Silvio, you're the one that's here. If you'd like to take a moment and say a few words about why you recommended Ethan, we'd really like to hear what you have to say.
Oh, hi, it's a pleasure, absolutely. Ethan started working with our research group a while ago, I think almost 2 semesters ago, and he was very instrumental into helping us developing this bioimaging process that we are doing. This is all related to the health of eelgrass, so we are trying to use a non-invasive method to calculate health of eelgrass and content of chlorophyll, but without killing any plants. And Ethan was very instrumental into putting that into practice. And it really is a lot of work. So he has to sit in front of his computer and analyze a lot of images. And he has always done that with a smile on his face and coming back with feedback to improve our system, and always on high spirits to do this work. So I think he's a well-deserving recipient of this award. And thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Well, Silvio, thank you so much for your help in identifying these students. We couldn't do it without you and Lori on this. And Ethan, I would just say as a follow-up to that being able in the sciences to be able to take something that your professor has done and be able to help refine it is really a gift, and to be able to do it with a smile on your face and in a way that they will accept. So congratulations on that. So
Thank
Ethan,
you so
if you would like to say something, this is your moment.
For sure, yeah. So I'll start by saying thank you so much to the Morro Coast Audubon Society for the scholarship. I was pretty ecstatic when Judy called me and informed me of the news. I was on a trip going somewhere, and that was like how the trip started. Got a call from you, and I was like, whoa, that's a really good way to start the week. Yeah, so this really wouldn't be possible without my two professors, Lori and Silvio, who chose to nominate me for the scholarship. I felt very honored knowing that they work with so many other really amazing students, and they decided to choose me out of all of them for the candidate. Yeah, so I plan on using the scholarship for like a 3-week research trip to Baja this upcoming summer. I've been saving up for a while now to go on the trip, and this makes it really, really nice to be able to go to it and make it possible. So it's been a huge help to receive it. Yeah, so thank you again to everyone at Morro Coast Audubon. Yeah, thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, congratulations, Ethan. We trust your class to Baja this summer will be both deeply inspiring and hugely informative. Just to let everybody know, we upped our scholarship from $500 to $1,000 this year. So I was serious when I said if anyone else out there would like to work on helping out with the scholarships, we might be able to do 2 scholarships next year. So thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Silvio. You may mute yourselves again, and thank you so much for coming this evening. So this is also the program where Morro Coast Audubon Society bestows the Volunteer Award of the Year on a volunteer who has made dedicated special efforts on behalf of Morro Coast Audubon Society to fulfill our mission. If you remember, for the last 3 years, our field trips were moribund. They were moribund during the pandemic. We had no field trips, and we could feel enthusiasm in the society begin to soften and wane, until the force of nature known as Freddie Howell agreed to take over the coordinator of field trips and get them up and running again. So Freddie put together a crack team of coordinators, which includes Bobby and Rob Revel, I would let you know. In addition to Joanne Austin, I mean, she has put together an incredible team. She put together an incredible team of field trip leaders and a technology specialist to work out glitches in the registration, and voila, Morro Coast Audubon has run over 90 field trips and workshops for beginners to advanced birders alike just since March. So Freddie, it is with great pleasure I would like to read your certificate to the assembled multitudes tonight.
Well, thank you very much.
And it's waiting for you in the office. We didn't want to send it because it has glass on it. So next time you're at the office, you will get your certificate, and there should be something in the mail to you with a gift certificate of appreciation also.
Oh, well, thank you so very much.
So here we go.
I'm honored.
On behalf of the Morro Coast Audubon Society, we are pleased to present this Volunteer of the Year Award 2022 to Freddie Howell. Freddie Howell became a volunteer with Morro Coast Audubon Society as member of the Education Committee. Her love for and consummate skill in teaching about birds to both children and adults was obvious from day one. She leaped into the classroom presentations with enthusiasm and has inspired uncounted children to become bird watchers in their yards and neighborhoods. But she took it one step farther and worked with the Slow Land Conservancy's Living Among the Oaks program. or Learning Among the Oaks program to mentor elementary school students to become bird savvy oak ambassadors for their schools. Freddie never stops with one or even two roles. She then became field trips coordinator for Morro Coast Audubon, assembled a crack team of collaborators, and restarted the field trips for Morro Coast Audubon Society after the COVID pandemic shut down that essential part of the Morro Coast Audubon Society mission. In less than a year, her team has put together a group of skilled leaders and has organized over 90 outstanding field trips to all areas of San Luis Obispo County. These have included workshops for beginning birders and family-friendly field trips. Morro Coast Audubon and bird lovers of all ages are grateful for Freddie's outstanding contributions. So Freddie, our deepest gratitude for everything that you do.
And I couldn't do it without the team. Robbie has been my partner and cohort in crime, so to speak. I could not do it without her. And we've been very fortunate with, as you say, with the leaders. And the other group that I'd like to thank are the participants. My little blurb that I was going to read for the programs was talking about the Stop and Scope extravaganza that we're doing on the 23rd, which is Thursday. And we have 95 people signed up.
Oh my gosh.
Please don't all come at once. We're going to be there for a four-hour period. So it's kind of stretch it out a little bit. But,
so Freddie, do you want to make that announcement now?
Sure. The field trip committee is bringing our first successful year to a close on December 23rd from 9 to 1. And we're having a Stop and Scope extravaganza at the Marina Boardwalk. And as I said, we have 95 people coming. So as I said, don't all show up at once at 9 o'clock, but we are going to have some people sort of directing traffic, and we've got lots of scopes that are going to be set up. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And we will have a designated little person scope as well. And the committee is going to take the month of January off for the Bird Festival and also to work on the February trips. And we've got some really fun ones already planned, and they're different. So I also thank the leaders for coming up with some really cool ones. And as always, stay tuned. And thank you very, very much, Judy. Thank you.
It was our pleasure, believe me. So we're going to move on to the compilation. If you have any questions during Jay's compilation, please type them into the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So it's on to the compilation for Morro Coast Audubon Society's 69th Christmas bird count. I want to thank all of you who were out looking for birds, but especially who put in hours of work to make this count possible. Jay Carroll was the overall coordinator and compiler this year. Joanne Austin was registrar and co-coordinator, and area leaders are Jay Carroll, Steve Tillman, Steve McMasters, and Eric Wier. I understand we are also having a special appearance by Tom Edell as emeritus coordinator tonight. So Jay, take it away.
All right, thank you, Judy. If Eric and Steve would unmute at this point, then just want to make sure you can chime in whenever you'd like to. Yeah, thanks a lot. Boy, we had we had a lot of volunteers out there. We had I think about 110 people, which that in and of itself makes it a successful count, I think, right off the bat, regardless of how many species we saw, right? And welcome to everybody that's watching this. And I know some people couldn't make it out to participate in the count for one reason or another, but at least this will give you an idea of how things went. And we were treated with some excellent weather. I stepped out of my front door at 6:30 in the morning because I live in the sector that I was birding, and it was kind of cool and frosty before the sun came up, and I heard two great horned owls hooting back and forth right off the bat. So, I mean, there goes, the list starts right then, right? So we had a little rainfall last week, which muddied up some of the roads, which made access difficult or not possible in some areas, but we worked around that. So it was all good. And I'd like to formally thank the team here, of course. Joanne, as Judy said, is our communications chair, account registrar, and everything web related. So that was fantastic again, Joanne, for doing that and making sure everybody could register and organizing all that end of things. And our area leaders did a tremendous job. We still have a lot of work to do in the coming days and weeks to get all the results together. Eric, where's Eric? Oh, Eric, wave Eric. Yeah. Lives in SLO, and he was organizing the participants in that area, as was Steve McMasters. He lives in SLO too, so that was the eastern side of the circle. Even though Steve Tillman, aka Mr. Wingnut, lives in the North County, we gave him the north part of the count circle to be responsible for. So we had them surrounded, I think, because I live in Los Osos, so it was all good. We missed Jim Royer this time around. He's one of our extraordinary birders, and he had some really holiday travel plans, so he couldn't make it, but we covered for him. And we're glad to have Tom Edell here tonight. Obviously, everybody knows who Tom is. He's, well, maybe we refer to him as the godfather of slow birding. So 5 years ago, when Tom asked me if I wanted to take over as count compiler, I immediately realized that it wasn't really an invitation, but it was more like an offer I couldn't refuse, you know. So, but I'm honored to do it, and I'm really glad to be able to do it. So, so compared to about the other 140 Christmas bird count circles in California and some 2,500 in North America, our count always ranks high in both participation and the number of species seen. So last year in 2021, our count was number 5 in the nation with 202 species, which is pretty impressive. I mean, we're behind Texas, for example, with all of their species diversity down there, and some other areas with very high participation, but that's pretty impressive, really. And we have high diversity of habitats here, which is obviously crucial to have good bird diversity, but we also have that large group of dedicated volunteers, birders with a wide range of birding experience. So we're fortunate. And though it may seem that this might lean a little bit towards the competitive side of birding, you know, with national rankings and that sort of thing, it's really all the data that we collect is important. And if you didn't have to see some rare species during the count, don't feel as if your efforts aren't valuable, because they are. So, you know, eBird has been a really amazing resource for data on changes in bird abundance worldwide, but the Christmas count data set goes back 120 years or more, and that has very valuable information on long-term trends and the abundances of certain common species that just don't show up in eBird. So that long-term data set effect. So that's a really, really valuable thing, and good reason to participate, other than just enjoying birding and the social aspect of things as well. I think I will bring up my screen here and see if that can be shared. Is everybody seeing a screenshot of the 2022 CBC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what this year, for the first time, we were accepting eBird lists from participants who could post their observation lists to our Christmas bird count, eBird count. And I've been accumulating those for the last day or so. And this map up here, each of those markers indicates one checklist that was submitted by one of our participants on Saturday, the 17th. And down here, you can see that we had 70 checklists submitted so far. And this eBird program is a great thing. It's called a trip report, and it accumulates and summarizes the data from multiple observers, and you can make it over multiple days as well. It's a very, very cool tool that we're just starting to explore and use for the Christmas bird count. And with those 70 checklists, we came up with 164 species. So these were just the eBird ones. And of course, we had people submitting their field checklists, paper lists to us as well. And when we go down through the checklist of species that were seen, this 164 species number will increase. So at least as far as the suspense goes, we know we're at least at 164. So sorry to spoil the suspense if we're thinking that was going to be fairly low. That's a great number of species on a one day for most count circles right there. Another thing too here is there's some more detail down below here. So as the this species list has been accumulating here, you can see there are brant, cackling goose, Canada goose, and then this is expanded at blue-winged teal, and I was able to, you're able to see which lists had blue-winged teal, and then you can actually click on it and call up that list that includes photographs and everything else. So it's a really great multi-dimensional tool, I think. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, and we're going to move on to our checklist. And this is similar to what we did before. I have a spreadsheet here with our species list on the left-hand side, which is identical to our field checklist taxonomic order. And what I'll do is, as we go down the list, I'll put a check mark in this column, and up at the top we have our cumulative number, which will change each time we put a check mark next to the species that was seen. So Steve McMasters, are you there?
Yep.
You're good. Okay. So and Eric and Steve, and Tom's down in there somewhere. I can't see his window, but any of you guys are welcome to chime in and add some detail, or if we miss something, I need more eyes on this so I don't add something that wasn't supposed to be added. So
Okay.
let's get going. If there's no other questions, this is kind of like a post field, like a field trip meeting, right? At the end, when you'll get together and around the tailgate and go down the list, and we just have 100 people standing around in the parking lot, and we're going to go down the list one by one. So snow goose, I don't think that showed up on Saturday. I didn't see it on any of the lists, and we had a couple of individuals around earlier in the month, juvenile and adult, but I don't think there were any in the circle, so I don't think we can take that one off. Same with Ross's goose. I didn't hear of any Ross's geese that were cited. And then I think surprisingly, I don't think we had great white front goose. Tom, do you want to unmute your sound there? That's correct, right?
I'm not aware of any.
And it was odd because there was such a huge pulse of them in October, November.
Yeah, and I think there's still a lot around, but they're not here. They're on the North Coast or on the South Coast.
Yeah. I think we might have them for count week, but there were none then. So move on to brant, which is kind of one of our iconic species here with our count circle, because it encompasses Morro Bay. John Roser, who's a brant researcher for many, many years, he goes out a couple days before the actual count day to do a dedicated count for brant specifically, because it's part of a data set that's a whole coastwide network for the brant population in the eastern North Pacific. So he counted 628 brand. But none of those 628 that he counted were actually in Morro Bay. They were out off the sand spit out in the open ocean, and he has been tracking them pretty carefully. And because I think hunting pressure primarily and activity in the bay during the day, it forces the brant to fly offshore. And then after sunset, they fly back in, and then they feed and rest in the bay, and then they leave early in the morning. So he was able to, he checked the bay and didn't see any, but then he went up to the high point, which is the spot that overlooks the sand spit up on the road to Montaña de Oro. And he counted them offshore, all lined up, 628. And I have a chart here showing the long-term abundance of the brant here by year. Starts at year 2000. And you see how it just slowly started declining after about 2006. And by 2014, it was down to about 230 in our particular count here, the ones that were overwintering in Morro Bay. This is a tremendous drop. And a lot of that was attributed to the eelgrass declines over the years. This is a figure from the Morro Bay National Estuary Program. And down at the bottom left, you can see in the fall of 2007, aerial counts with infrared and other sensing tools and ground truthing showed that there was 340 acres of eelgrass. And 3 years later, it was down to 176. And then by 2017, there were only 13 acres of eelgrass in Morro Bay. And this is the prime food for the brant. And so you can see they might have been showing up, but that they just didn't have any food resources. So this eelgrass started recovering here, and the reasons for the recovery are maybe still a little bit unknown. But in fall of 2021, there was 500 acres of eelgrass, which is a tremendous increase. And you can see how the brant numbers have slowly increased. Last year we had 1,000. This year the number's at 628, but there's fluctuations in there, interannual fluctuations. And even though the overall population seems to be doing pretty well, the ones that stop here declined a little bit since last year. So moving on, we have one species. Yay. Okay, we only have however many more to go. This will move right along here pretty quickly. Cackling goose, I'm going to put a X here because we had some cackling geese reported. Canadas, of course. I didn't hear of any wood ducks. Sometimes we get those in some small inland, like stock ponds and so forth. If anybody knows of any wood ducks that we're seeing, we would like to know about it. Certainly blue-winged teal and cinnamon teal, which are both very closely related. And in fact, during, I think yesterday, John Roser found a hybrid blue-winged cinnamon teal over at Cuesta Inlet here. So that's an interesting bird. Quite a neat paint job on that one. And we can report that for count week. So it becomes part of the data set. Northern shoveler, lots of those out there. Yes, gadwall. And I was able to do the Where's Waldo thing and pick out the one Eurasian widgeon out of about 1,000 ducks at the bottom of the Elephant Forest overlook there. Male. There's probably maybe some others out there, but or females. Females are really difficult to tell at a distance, but. And American widgeon, there's a lot of American widgeons. I actually tripped Tom's filter, which is set at about 500, and there were more than that out there. So it's good to see. At least something is really doing well out there. And mallards, of course, are always there. Northern pintail, yes. Green wings, these are all expected wintering duck species. And canvasback's kind of interesting. I put a photo in here. And by the way, these photos are just I kind of set some up next to species of interest as much just because birds are cool to look at, but also we might say a thing or two about the ones that are there. There were, I think, Dean Thompson and his crew over at Camp San Luis had 3 or 4 of them in one of the ponds, reservoirs back at Camp San Luis. So he reported that, which is nice to see. I was looking back at our historic data set from 1948 to 2021. And in 1972, there were 482 canvasbacks. So that was a lot. From some years, I think in the 80s also, Tom, there were years where we had a lot of canvasback, but it seems like in recent years they've been pretty scarce.
Yeah, I think they've declined overall.
Yes. In the Central Valley, of course, is where you would find the most of these most of the waterfowl and concentrations of them, and they, that's one of their migratory pathways, and a few of them get over to the coast here. But fun fact, canvasback is the fastest flying duck in the world. It looks fast too. It's strong, powerful, and it's aerodynamic, isn't it? So we'll put next there. Ringneck duck, yes. And greater scaup, I had a couple of those out there. Lessers, number of those. I have these combination categories or slash categories, which don't get counted as separate species, but if we don't see either of the species that comprise that slash category, then we would check that as a species, because it was one or the other that was there. Surf scoter, a lot of those out there offshore along the sand spit. I don't think we've seen any white wings lately.
Yes,
Oh, did you have a white wing?
yes, I believe it was Greg Smith off of Point Bouchon.
Oh,
Trail.
sweet. Okay, great. Thank you. That's why we do this. Bufflehead, yes. There had been some common goldeneye in the bay, and but I think the last one reported was about a week before the count, and I didn't see a common goldeneye on the species list. So that's, these kind of rare things, they could be in part of the bay that you're not, and that sort of thing. So, but we did have a hooded merganser. I think Kevin Zimmer picked that hooded merganser over at the State Park Marina area. And we usually get some on Laguna Lake, but I don't think we got any on Laguna Lake this time around. He saw a female. This is a female. The male is a little bit more contrasting plumage, but that crest is just so amazing on these hooded mergansers. When the sunlight's coming through it, it almost looks like some confection or something like that, or a glass figurine. They're really gorgeous. Common merganser, that is one that I don't think we found. Certainly red-breasted, though, had a couple of those swimming around in the bay, so they're fairly regular. And loads and loads of ruddy ducks. So let's see, on to our quail. Steve Tillman, what's the report from the Cuesta Ridge?
Well, there were 2 reasons we didn't have a report. One is our counter came down with the flu the night before the count, and the road was closed for those of us that tried to get up there after we finished our sectors.
Oh man, double whammy.
We were considering a baton death march in the dark, but we didn't know if Tom would allow nocturnal records of mountain quail.
Yeah, well, that would have been a big ask to get to do that. But anyway, they're kind of a little bit of a coin flip. We know they're up there. They inhabit the entire, Cuesta Ridge there, east and west, and Santa Lucia's, but couldn't get them this time. So, oh well, maybe next time. California quail, lots of those. And wild turkey, I didn't get those have been increasing obviously over the last decade or more. And we see flocks of them walking across the road up Montaña de Oro and elsewhere. And they're almost getting to nuisance levels for some people, but I think they're cool. I don't know what the count will be, but it should be up there pretty high. Okay, grebes, pinebill, yes. Horned grebe, yes. Eared grebe, yes. I had a couple reports of Western Clarks, which is just saying that they were maybe too far away to differentiate between the two species, but I didn't see, and maybe I don't have Kevin Zimmer's report list yet, so he may have identified one or both of those species, but for now, I think we'll just put it at Clark's Western, unless anyone's aware of the identification down to the species level there. So let's see, rock pigeons, here we go. If you're doing Morro Bay, you're going to find rock pigeons because there's lots to eat on the Embarcadero. Fantail pigeons, they've been increasing quite a bit too. I think Bill Haas, who did the Perfumo Canyon area, recorded a total of 162 up there. And we've seen flocks of 50 or 60 pretty commonly. So they feed on acorns and other things, but it's been a really big acorn year. And that might have something to do with the fact that the more have been attracted here. But fan-tailed pigeons, quite a few of those around, even in just in the neighborhoods. Yes, Eurasian collared dove and mourning dove. And there's a roadrunner. They're so cool. I'm glad we have those around here. They're obviously a southwestern bird, but I picked, by the way, these photos are from Birds of the World, and I have photo credits attached to them, but I don't have them out here. But this is a great shot of a bird running on the road, and therefore it's a roadrunner. It's like, you know, ID, great ID characteristic right there. We usually get those up on the saddle at San Luis Peak above Laguna Lake, but you can see them anywhere. You can see them, you know, out at Diablo, or I actually had one as a yard bird here in Los Osos, which, if you've seen my yard, is pretty impressive. It just landed and flew in on the roof. That was pretty unusual. Okay, white-throated swift, yes. They're very cool. And I had a picture of one up here. This is a great photo. There's this birder, her name is Marky Muchler. And I think she actually went out on one of our pelagic trips up here, but she's a researcher down in LA. And I saw this photo and I'm like, wow, you can actually see the sparkle in the eye of a white-throated swift. I mean, it had to be going by at like 70 miles an hour. And I thought that was a pretty cool photograph. I like those. Glad we have those around too. Anna's hummingbird, of course, and Allen's rufus, which are the Selasphorus type, and they migrate through, but a few winter. And Tom has a stakeout spot over in Morro Bay, a huge, was that a Cape honeysuckle? Yeah, and I think Heather found one there, so that's a good spot for them. There's a subspecies of the Allens that is sedentary, and it's the one that I think that, say, down in Santa Barbara and Southern California, tend not to migrate, and then a large part of the population migrates through to head south, you know, below the border in the wintertime. Is that about accurate, Tom?
Yeah, and it has been working its way north, and it's possible that these birds we're picking up in winter could be the sedentarius race.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right then. So I didn't see a report for Virginia Rail. Does anybody know whether anybody picked up a Virginia Rail?
Don't
No.
know.
Okay.
I know they're at Laguna Lake, but you gotta
Yeah.
be lucky or,
Yeah, they're real secretive. I mean, you can try a little bit of playback, and if you don't get and I do that from time to time, but when I'm out in the proper habitat, but I didn't hear of any reports of that. We did have a Sora though, or a few Soras. American coot. Yep. Lots of those. Okay, here we're going. We're down at 38. We got a ways to go here. American avocet. So this is yeah, we had some, but this is another one that is very interesting. The populations of avocets have been declining, and I have a little chart for that, and I'll share American avocet. So, this is just from our Morro Bay Christmas count data, and as you can see, there was like a peak in 2010 to 2013. We had up to 600 or 652 between probably Morro Bay, maybe some at Laguna. I don't know. Did they get a Laguna, Tom? Or these are mostly from the Bay?
Mostly from the Bay and where.
Yeah. And then check this out. 2014 decline 425. 2015 down to 125 birds. And then this time around, as far as I tell, our high number was 14 in the Bay. So, population wide, they've been declining, and that's really reflected in here. And factors such as, poor water quality in the Central Valley, selenium, wetland losses and disturbance have all taken their toll on these just gorgeous birds. So, sometimes they're just local factors that affect the abundance of things that we see here during the Christmas bird count, but other times it's population-wide changes, and I think that this is a reflection of those declines.
Jay, I was just looking in the eBird database, and it looks like Nick Bellardi's and Jane had Virginia Rail at Laguna Lake.
Okay.
oh, good.
Okay, good. We would expect that there would be some around. I just so we'll put a tick mark there. Great. On to some more shorebirds here. Black oyster catcher, yes, out on the outer coast. Great, iconic species. Black-bellied plovers, lots of those. Snowies, we got a few of those out on the sand spit. I remember one year, a couple of years ago, we were scratching for even one snowy plover. It was weird, but we did pick it up. Semi-palmated, yes, there were some reports of those. Not in any real numbers, but we had those. Killdeer, yes. Wimbrel, yes. Long-billed curlew, yes. And marbled godwit. Those are some of our anchor species of shorebirds that are very abundant in Morro Bay, that feed on the mud flats at low tide and the sand spit. I love watching the marbled godwits like kind of pick over a sand crab and get it oriented just right and just softened up just right, and then they go and just like goes right down their bill and down into their stomach. They're pretty cool. Ruddy turnstone, that's kind of a hard ask, and I don't think we saw any of those on the count. There weren't any. Greg didn't report them, so he was out in the area where they might have been seen. Black turnstone, yeah, obviously we got some of those out there along the breakwaters and so forth. Let's see, red knot, yes. Kevin picked up red knot from the State Park Marina Boardwalk. Surfbird, yes. Sanderling, yes. Dunlin, yes. Leaf Sandpiper, of course, and Westerns. These are our peeps. Not our people, but our peeps. I don't know why I'm getting this thing going around here. This is a series thing. Anyway. Short bill dowitcher. I had long billed for sure because I heard them, and I didn't see any reports of the short billed, and that's the voice, the call notes are the ones that you can really tell the difference between them in winter when they're non-breeding. So maybe Kevin was able to pick up some short builds. I just saw like a handful of them, a dozen or so, but the only ones that called were long billed. So Wilson snipe. Here I got a picture of one over here. How can you not like a Wilson snipe? They're just such cool looking birds. We usually get a dozen or more of them. They're so well camouflaged. This happens to be kind of an unusual photo because you can actually see the whole bird. They're not totally camouflaged. But we picked those up in a few areas during the count this time around. Red phalarope? Probably not. I didn't hear that from our sea watchers. We had Brad Schramm and we had Greg Smith out doing sea watch for us, and they made had some good observations, but I don't think red phalarope was part of that. Spotted sandpiper, yep. Wandering tattler, yes, Greg picked up one of those. Greater yellowlegs are usual around here. A ton of willets. I think, yeah, common mirror, I think, was called out. Caston's auklet?
No,
There was a rhino.
rhino, yeah.
I think Brad picked up a rhino offshore. And here's a picture of one right here. Very cool. Some indication that they might even breed in the summer off of Shell Beach, but we haven't confirmed that. Let's see. Okay, black-legged kittiwake. No, I haven't heard any reports of those lately. Into the gulls, Bonapartes, yes. Earmans, yes. Short-billed, formerly the Mew gull. Yes. Ring-billed, yes, of course. Westerns, the only gull that breeds here along the coast, as far as I know. There might have been some records of Heermans breeding at one time, or an odd record, but I think Westerns are our only breeder. California, yes, we got a herring gull out on the sand spit.
Okay.
A good adult with the yellow eye and the paler mantle. No reports of Thayers as far as I know, or maybe even any local or recent records here. So that's one we sometimes get at Laguna Lake, actually, get juveniles at Laguna Lake in the Gulf flocks out there, but there hadn't been one during the scouting effort before. By the way, 3 days before the count day and 3 days after comprises what we call the count week. And National Audubon accepts presence absence data on species that were seen during count week that didn't show up on count day as part of the submission, the data submission. So they're not counted numerically, but the species is noted, and that becomes part of the larger database. So for example, last year I was reading the the account about the nationwide CBC count for 2021, and there was the occurrence of that. There's a Stellar's sea eagle that was in the Northeast. It had flown across Canada, and people were tracking it. I mean, it's a huge rarity. It's more of a something you would see in Siberia. It's just a huge eagle, and people were hoping for that on the Christmas count, and it did cross through one of the count circles in count week, but nobody actually was able to record it for count day. So, I mean, what a great find anyway, but now it's actually part of the CBC database. Glaucoswing, yes, had one of those out there. So we're up to 70. Here we go. Caspian terns, yes. Forsters, correct. And a few royals out there. There's a picture of royal tern. They're big, very showy. Into the loons, red-throated, yes. Pacific and common, of course, living up to its namesake. No northern fulmar or sooties that I heard of being reported. However, we did have, I think Brad reported black-vented shearwater.
Mhm.
And here's a black-vented shearwater right here. They're a smaller shearwater, often found inshore and sometimes in tremendous numbers. So they're quite different from the sooties, and we did pick up some of those. I don't know how many he saw out there.
I think it was just like 3 or something.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was like you said, leading off, Jay, it was a glorious day to be out birding, and great sea watching conditions, but there just wasn't much out there. And
Well, there wasn't much wind either, so
yeah, seabirds like the wind.
Yeah, oftentimes the wind is a blessing and a curse for pelagic birding, right?
Right.
Because the birds need that wind to move around. Cormorants, yes, all 3 species. And white pelicans. And of course, the brown pelicans. I don't recall a bittern being reported at all. Certainly great blue herons and our egrets, both of our egrets. And there's always a few green herons kind of down in the reeds. Sometimes they're like at some of the freshwater ponds, and Cal Poly, Laguna Lake often has a green heron. Black crowned night herons, yes. Turkey vultures, few osprey. We always have to kind of make sure we don't overcount the osprey because they range so widely. Anybody that's counting, is gonna in the area is gonna see them, and then multiple counters like count the same bird unknowingly. So we have to do a little bit of educated guesswork on the actual number of them around. White-tailed kite. Here's beautiful shot of a white-tailed kite. Those certainly were here, not in tremendous numbers, but they're around. Had golden eagle reports. Northern harrier, they're here year round, of course. As far as sharp-shinned and coopers were both reported. And bald eagle. Great to have the bald eagles be more regular down here now. 10, 20 years ago, they were considered pretty unusual around here. But I saw 2 of them together perched out in the pickleweed marsh of the Morro Delta there. So easily recognizable, and they were seen by several of our counters. A couple of them show up at Laguna Lake too, I think, but I don't know that those were reported from there this time around. Our hawks, red-shouldered, red tail, And more of a wintering one, Ferrugi. Did you see a ferruginous, Tom?
I did not, but apparently the Richardson group did, and so did the group in San Lucido and San Bernardo Creek.
Oh, okay. Good. More open grassland kind of a bird. And I think I saw like a Sloco birding report last week of one at like the intersection of Foothill and LOVR. But you know, these Bootios, they move around a lot, right? So, but good that we picked up Ferrugi's. Barn owl, yeah, there's some reports of those. Here's into the owls. We had a for some of the more unusual owl species, Bill Haas was up in Upper Perfumo and Sea Canyon, and he did some owling at 4 a.m. and he also did some in the following evening, and that evening of the count too. And I saw his report. He was able to identify 10 western screech owl territories up there in 3 different locations. So that's he was pretty impressed that it's the highest density of screech owls in the Central Coast that he's aware of. So that's pretty cool. Great horned, yes, of course. I don't think I didn't see pygmy owl on his list. We saw several burrowing owls at various locations. Not the least of which was Morro Rock. There's one that's been there since October, I believe, and it's become quite a celebrity. So that's cool to have a burrowing owl. Sometimes it's difficult to find those. Spotted owl, I didn't see. Bill had that on his report. He did, however, have a long-eared. So those are pretty rare, and he has a extensive description of that. So we'll have to kind of check that out and you know, see if that's a good call. But we're going to add long-eared for now. Short-eared, yeah, they're over on the Morro Bay State Park grasslands off of Torrey Road. I had 3 of them over there in the evening, or the late afternoon, I should say. It's nice to have them around. I think some of them are the same ones that have come back year after year, but short-eared. And I think, yeah, Bill also, he had northern saw-whet as well. So remember, these are like preliminary results. We'll take a close look at some of these calls that might be, I don't know, need more documentation before we put them in our final count. And that's one of the things that we do as our area leaders. We make sure that the species identifications are correct, and that we try to get the most accurate counts as we can. So, all right, where are we? 106. Oh, come on, we're over 100 now, which is good. Belted kingfisher, yep. Red-breasted sapsucker, I'm assuming there were some of those around. Yep, that's the one that's always around. Acorn woodpeckers, yes, of course, they're here year-round. Then our Nuttall's, Downy, and Hairy, they're always here. Northern flicker, I didn't hear of any yellow shafted reports, but either or hybrids for that, or intergrades for that matter. But they all get lumped under the northern flicker anyway. They were separate species at one time. Tom probably remembers way back when they had the separate species of the the red shafted and yellow shafted flicker, the yellow being more of the eastern populations, but then they were back, maybe it was back in the 80s or 90s, I can't remember, that it was combined into one species. American kestrel, yes, of course. Merlin, yep, there are wintertime visitors coming down here. peregrines, of course. I don't know, did we have we had a prairie on count week, I believe. Did anyone remember hearing of one seen on count day, prairie falcon? I don't recall a report of that, but we can, one might show up that from somebody's list that we missed, or they didn't report it right away.
Yeah, one was at Cal Poly and Count Week.
Count week, okay. Yeah, well, that's good. We knew they were around. Black Phoebe, some of our fly catchers that actually stick around in the wintertime here, where most of the fly catchers just come up here in the summer and pass through. And when there's a lot of insects, for some reason the black and sage Phoebe are here in the wintertime. Caston's kingbird are increasing over the last decade or so quite a bit. And at one time they were considered pretty uncommon here, but now they're regular year round. Hutton's vireo, of course, and yeah, loggerhead shrike. I should have backed up a little bit here because we've got the Lewis's woodpecker up here, and even though it's not on our count checklist, this was a very unusual year for our winter for Lewis's woodpeckers. Last winter, we had a group of them up off of Highway Pozo Road up in that area, 58. And this year, we were seeing them reports in Poly Canyon, up in Perfumo Canyon, and also Scott Inman and his group picked some up in Clark Valley, Upper Clark Valley. So I think Bill Haas reported 27 of them at the top of Perfumo. And I personally saw at least a dozen or 15 of them last week up there. So it's really pretty wild. I look back at our records, and of the 69 Christmas bird counts that we've held here in the Morro Bay count circle, this is only the 5th year where there was even a Lewis's woodpecker reported. So 5 out of 69. And so this is really quite an unusual year for Lewis's woodpecker, and they're noted for being eruptive in their behavior. The populations can show up in areas and then leave. So it's consistent with their behavior. I don't know what it says about the population as a whole, but it's interesting to have these very colorful woodpeckers here. And they're in the same genus, the Melanerpes, as the acorn woodpecker, and the acorn woodpeckers up in Perfumo Canyon are probably it's a little daunting to have this large congener show up, the population of them. So I don't know how they're getting along in their interactions up there. Okay, here we're down to the corvids.
Just don't touch our acorn stashes, right?
I think so. They're kind of, Lewis's are kind of unusual because they eat acorns, but they're also fly catchers too. So like I went up there early one morning when the sun was coming through, and they were just like fluttering back and forth between trees and going up way high. It'd be like 10 of them all like circling around, and then they'd land, and it was quite interesting behavior. Yeah, and so the jays, Steller's jay. I like the jays. Scrub jay, yellow-billed magpie. We seem to always get some over off of San Bernardo Creek Road in that area. Ron Rupert and his group picked them up, but there's been one over at the Morro Bay State Park, which is an unusual location for it. And Kevin saw that particular bird over there too. So American crow. And by the way, the yellow-billed magpie is really a true California endemic. It's only really found in the Central Valley, and then along the Central Coast here, pretty much down into Santa Barbara. So you won't see them in Nevada. And there's the black-billed magpie is widespread. but you won't see them much down in Southern California at all either. So it's pretty interesting that we have those here. Gazillion crows. Ravens have become more common within the count circle, along the Santa Lucias, and even along the coast here in recent years. Okay, chestnutback chickadees, titmouse. Here we're going through all our passerines here that we see in the oak woodlands. Horned lark, yes. There's some flocks of those out and around. They're very colorful and nice to see those. Oops. Doesn't matter whether it's 1X or 2X, it just looks for an X. Okay, the swallows. Tree swallows, violet green and barn. These are the three species that tend to stick around. You won't see northern roughwing, or it'd be rare to see one of those and this time of year. Bush tits, yes. Wren tits, yes. I had this photo in there from last year, and I just like it. The ruby crown kinglet. You don't often see the ruby crown, but when they get agitated, sometimes it just really is so so amazing to see that. And that's just the males that do that. So, but the golden crown is one that we look for, golden crown kinglet, and I didn't hear any reports of those. I think we've got them at Black Hill before, up in the pines there, but I don't think there was any mention of those there or elsewhere.
Yeah, sometimes in the conifers at the campground at Montana de Oro.
Yeah, and maybe even oh, that's right. Yeah, and maybe even over at the state park. But and here's another one, red-breasted nuthatch, which from year to year, I mean, we had big year of red-breasted nuthatches like last winter, and there was one report earlier in count week from Montana de Oro with a photo, but that wasn't refound as far as I know. So unless we get another report from somewhere else, we'll have to not be able to count red-breasted nuthatch this year. Certainly white-breasted are around. Yep, blue-gray gnatcatcher. And here's another one, brown creeper. I'm kind of surprised that I didn't see that on the list. They're around in appropriate habitat. Certainly you can go up to Cerro Alto campground and find them. Maybe we need to do some redistricting and make a little kind of a part of the circle that goes up around the campground there, but that would not be cheating. Yeah, so brown creeper, I will have to pass on that one. I think the wrens, though, we pretty much got the complement of wrens, the rock wren and the canyon wren. Both of those, you can go over to Morro Rock and see those. Canyon wren here. They have that great song. And the call too, both very distinctive. Often you'll hear them before you see them. House wren, yes. Pacific wren, Eric, that's in your territory. You got some of those in Coon.
Yeah, upper Hazard Canyon too. I think they had one.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we had two in Coon Creek Trail, so that was nice.
They can be pretty skulky, so.
Yeah, they like that dark, wet undergrowth kind of stuff, real thick.
Mm-hmm. So Pacific wren, we'll put those in. Marsh wren, yes. And of course, Beox wren. All right, bluebirds, thrushes, and pipits, starlings, thrashers, northern mockingbird, yes. Western bluebird, yes. And Tom found mountain bluebird, right?
Yeah, I found them, and so did So did two other parties.
Okay, great. That's always a nice addition. That's not usually Carrizo is where you go to look for mountain bluebird. And when they get down here over the other side of the grade, it's always a treat. Okay. And here's another kind of a eruptive species that's not always around, varied thrush. And even though there was one reported, I don't even know if there was during count week, but it was recently, within the last 10 days, there was a report of varied thrush out of Coon Creek. And I know that Eric and his team would have found one if it had been obvious, but they're again are very skulky birds, or can be, and if there's, they can hear disturbance coming for a while, so, or for a ways. So I didn't get any reports of varied thrush this time around. Hermit thrush, of course, bunch of those around. Robins and blocks of cedar waxwings. I know most of the experienced birders were combing through the cedar waxwings to look for a potential Bohemian waxwing, which would be, I don't even know, is that even a county bird, Tom? Bohemian?
Yeah, there's actually a specimen,
Wow.
but it's been a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. I think there was some reports up maybe Northern California, and they do show up from time to time, but down here they would be very, very rare, obviously. Scaly breasted munia are on the increase. That's our little introduced bird that loves to attack seed feeders. I had a dozen of them at my seed feeder. You can actually almost see the level of the seed dropping as they're like eating. They're just like, a lot of them around Laguna Lake, and they've kind of they've naturalized and moved up from Southern California in recent years. And there's reports up in Sacramento and the Bay Area, but yeah, they're here to stay, as the house sparrows are. And house finches, yes, of course. And purple finches, yep, we got those on the count. This is not a big year for pine siskins either. It's kind of an interesting, like all these kind of eruptive species like the red-breasted nuthatch, and the and maybe even the varied thrush and that sort of thing didn't show up, and pine siskins didn't either much, but Max had one out of Poly Canyon on his list, which is good. Flyover.
Yeah, we had him over on the foothill area in San Luis as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, but it is kind of a down year for them, relatively speaking, I think. Compared to last year, they were around for quite a few months last year in good numbers too. Goldfinches, lesser in American. Yep. Okay, where are we at? 158. Here we go. On to the sparrows. Lark sparrow, yes. Oops. And fox sparrow. Yeah, a couple of different groups of those as well, subspecies groups. I think thick-billed and the sooty is the one that we get mostly, but the other subspecies show up occasionally as well. Dark-eyed junco, of course. I didn't see any, not that we counted as a separate species, but slate-colored, I didn't hear of any reports of slate-colored subspecies of junco, dark-eyed junco this year. Just kind of odd because we usually get a few of them. White-throated sparrow, big year for white-throated sparrows. Steve, didn't you have like half a dozen or 4 or 5 of them over there where you were?
The most we counted was a flock of 5 and a small flock of 3, about 200 yards apart. It was a good day for those birds. Those are just the ones we could see. We thought we heard more calling, but we couldn't be sure.
Yeah, I mean, we might wind up all told, 30 or 40 in the count circle, which is very unusual in my experience here anyway.
Yeah,
Eastern-
it's a very
Eastern
good
breeder.
one.
Yeah.
And Steve, Jay, I think you, I don't know when you want to mention your hybrid.
Oh, well, I have it actually down at the very bottom here.
Okay.
As an extra species because, yeah, we do have over at Sweet Springs, we have a dark-eyed cross with a white-throated or white crowned sparrow. And that's been hanging around. I actually have a photo of it down at the bottom of the list. So we'll tack that on at the end. Very unique. Tons of white crowns. All the migratory subspecies are here, in addition to our local nuttall-eye. Golden crowns. Bells is one that we would have likely been able to get up on the ridge had we been able to survey up there. That's habitat where we would normally find Bell's sparrow this time of year, but we didn't. So I didn't hear any other reports of it. Savannas, yes. Song sparrow, of course. Lincolns, quite a few Lincolns around. And we did pick up swamp. I know, Tom, you had a report off Foothill Road. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. It's always a good one. We didn't have any here in Los Osos, so I was kind of surprised. When Jim Royer is here, he is the swamp sparrow magnet. He goes out and knows where to look for them, and he's usually comes up with one, but we haven't been able to find any in the last few weeks. So anyway, I don't think. Oh yeah, we do have swamp on the list though. Good. Kaltohi, yes, and Rufous crowned sparrow, yes, they're here pretty much year round, and spotted towhee. We're up to 171. Western meadowlark, yes. Red-winged blackbird, tricoloreds over at Cal Poly. As were lots of brown-headed cowbirds, as you'd expect, and ag pasture land. Brewer's blackbirds, yes, and yes, we had great-tailed grackles also. Down into the warblers, common ones, orange crowned, common yellowthroat, yes. We keep track of myrtles and audubons forms of the yellow rump on the lists, but of course, at this time there's just they're combined into a single species that could change in the future. Townsend's warbler, yes. I think Nick at least got a hermit, a reported one, a hermit warbler, which is western.
And Curtis had one too.
Okay, great.
In San Luis Creek.
Okay. Western warbler. And I had a report of Wilson's, but I'm gonna have to follow up on that. I need more information on the observation, but I didn't hear of any other Wilsons that were reported for sure. Most of them have gone south. Certainly, if you go down to Oso Flaco, you'll find some Wilsons down there overwintering, but typically not up here. And finally, on the actual field checklist, Western Tanager, and yeah, was it Steve, you or Eric that picked that up?
Steve Tillman got it.
Steve Tillman got it. Okay, great. It's always nice to get a Western Tanager. They're abundant during migration, but they're usually more like passage migrants, and so occasionally we have some overwintering. All right, now we're at 184 now on the species tally, and so we're going to start with some additional species. And I mean, I can ask people to chime in, but I put pictures of, this is a yellow-bellied sapsucker that was found by Daniel Elting over at the Old Mission Cemetery in Slough. And so to me anyway, I don't know, Tom, you agree, you took a look at the photo, it looks like a pretty good yellow-bellied sapsucker, not a hybrid.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. Like a male.
Yeah. Oops. Whatever. Typing's not my strong suit. What else? Name something else. Anybody?
Nashville warbler.
Nashville.
Curtis had it in San Luis Creek.
Okay. So we got X there. Got an X there.
Parasitic Jaeger.
Okay.
That was one Greg scope. I'm assuming he saw it with his scope off of the Point Bouchon Trail.
Nice. There was a blackneck stilt reported, I believe. That was one that was kind of flying around between Laguna and I think, Tom, you had it, didn't you, off Foothill? No, maybe that was,
I had it the day before, but not on count day.
I think Will found it over at the wastewater treatment plant. What else?
Rose-breasted grosbeak.
Oh, good one. I saw your photo.
Yeah, that was
Eric. That was really nice.
Laura's photo. Yeah.
Yeah, Laura, great job. Very unexpected.
Yeah, that was a fun surprise. And it was just right close to the trail. We just walked up and here's the bird like perched 15 feet away and just hung out there while Laura got the camera out and okay, I've had my picture.
I saw a few little red feathers it was kind of hard around in the breast region and the throat area.
Yeah, and then there was a little bit on the like upper, flank area too.
Okay.
Pink there.
Here's another one, palm warbler. There were, I think maybe at least a couple of those that were seen on the count.
Summer tanager.
Okay. Did you find that, Steve?
Yeah, that actually was right near Eric's house. In San Luis Creek.
Wow, great. We got the two tanagers, the western and summer tanager. White-faced ibis was one I recall being seen. It's just a single bird. Oh, and then, well, we mentioned Lewis's woodpecker, and that's not on the checklist.
Right.
So okay, 192, 193. Bullock's Oriole. I think Nick had a Bullock's Oriole at Laguna. Let's see.
And the tropical kingbird at Laguna as well.
Oh yeah, tropical kingbird. That's been great. That's the same bird that's been coming back for 7 or 8 years, right, to Laguna Lake, and we have to assume so because it's fairly unusual and it goes to the same perches and everything else. Okay. Tom.
Tennessee warbler.
Thank you. Nice one. It was nice to get an eastern warbler show up. We had a black and white warbler that was seen. I think we can do count week on the black and white warbler at Laguna Lake. And then it was a no-show on count day, despite some effort to relocate it. So it goes.
Also a yellow warbler,
Oh, okay.
Kevin Zimmer.
Okay. Well, unexpected also.
Morro Bay Campground.
Yep. Yep. Oh, Norm and Mike Stiles had a grasshopper sparrow over on over up off the Chumash Trail. Oops, got big all of a sudden. Why did it get big? Anyway, yeah, so 198. Oh man, we're getting there. Rosebuds are good. I have like a little list here, but I think we kind of exhausted the list. And we're at 198 right now. You know, interestingly, Kevin Zimmer described a shorebird that he thought may have been a stilt sandpiper from the State Park Marina Boardwalk out on the mudflats, but it was too distant for him to get a photo, or it flew, or he couldn't re-find it. So I don't know, Tom, did you, Curtis, or anybody go out, maybe try to look for that particular bird?
No, it sounded fairly hopeless. If somebody will maybe happen upon it, but
Yeah,
it was distant. The tide wasn't particularly noteworthy, so good luck figuring out where to look and when.
Yeah.
It's so much easier if something's found on a really high tide.
yeah, exactly. I mean, he gave a pretty good description, but it would need more documentation for something that's so rare to accept it for the count. So, and then we have, as I mentioned, this is a picture of the hybrid sparrow, which is unusual because it's an intergeneric hybrid between the junco and the Zonotrichia genera. And I would venture to say we don't count it because it's a hybrid and it doesn't count as a separate species. But this could be the only individual of this taxonomic category in the entire Audubon Christmas count, because up until this year and before Karen Perry found it at Sweet Springs, it wasn't even on the eBird list. And so when she and others finally concluded that that was the likely hybrid origin, the dark-eyed junco and the white-crowned sparrow, then they notified eBird, and in their latest update, they included that category as a combination category, /category. So because it's so unusual, I think that'll be one thing to keep an eye on. We may have the only dark-eyed junco white crown hybrid in the US here, at least on our count, you know. So that's kind of fun to think about. And then here, I just on the side here, I noted, there was a thick-billed fox sparrow observed also. Bill Haas had one of those up there. Now these, again, they aren't counted as part of our species total, but we do report them. And the numbers too, because they were on count day. And here's a few of the count week ones that I accumulated just based on some reports. I just have the abbreviations over here. Chipping sparrow, missing in action on count day, but I think Nick was able to find one like yesterday or something over at Laguna Lake. They had been around. Let's see. What is
White-fronted goose.
White-fronted goose. The Gwifga. Greater white-fronted goose. We did have that on count week. And prairie falcon, I think, as well. Red-breasted nuthatch. Here's the black and white warbler. And then I mentioned the hybrid blue-winged teal, cinnamon teal that John Roser found day before yesterday. So I think there we have it in terms of our tally. Pretty impressive, and I think that's just about our long-term average, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere right around slightly below 200.
Jay, did we have a large billed Savannah sparrow?
I don't have Kevin's
I think we did.
list.
Anyway, just another interesting bird, but not a species.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just make a note of that with a question mark. Yeah. So does anybody have anything to add at this point before I turn it back over to Judy? Everybody, thanks again. It was great. We might have some questions in the chat that people have typed in, and we can answer those. So Judy, you want to unmute your microphone and take it from here?
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, so
here.
thank you, Jay. You guys did a great job. I now know why I get the suburban area, because I'm not great at identifying all the oddball birds. You guys do an amazing job of finding these oddballs. So we have one question that I found, which was, when does CLO, I'm not sure what that stands for, put an introduced species on the count list? And what criteria do they use? I think that was in reference to the scaly-breasted munia.
Tom, you want to
probably-
address that?
Oh, Cornell Lab of Ornithology.
Tom, you need to unmute your microphone.
There you go. I was trying to, yeah, sorry. That's a good question. I think some of these species are counted before, or at least are recorded before they're actually officially added to the county list or the state list. I think an example of that was Eurasian collared doves. We kept track of those even though they didn't count as a species because they hadn't yet been put on the state list or put on the list for our county. So I think officially it's kind of up to the American Ornithologists Union or to make that decision as to what goes on, what's established. Once they're established, then they tend to go on the list. So it's good even if they're not established to keep track of the numbers, because that's important information for when they do become established.
Great. Well, I think that's about wraps it up. If everybody'd like to go down to the reactions and do the clapping hands, let everybody know. Oh, wait, Bob Revel just came in at the last minute. Can Jay quickly explain the difference between count day and count week?
Yeah, sure. Count day, of course, it was Saturday, and that's just the single day where within a 3-week period around Christmas time, each count circle, whoever's like, well, in fact, as an example, the Kathann Lynch is leading the Carrizo bird count on December 31st, I believe. Yeah, and so that's another count circle. That one day is count day, and then 3 days prior to that count day and 3 days afterward comprises the count week. Any species that were not seen on count day can be included in the report for count week. But it's not the abundance, it's just the presence or absence of those species.
Gotcha. Well, thank you to everybody. You know, I got to tell you, every year I report to National Audubon Society as to how many hours we put in. I report to the National Estuary Program how many hours Audubon puts in the watershed. So if I have 110 participants and you all worked 5 hours, I mean, that's a huge number of hours that people have put into counting birds in this county. And some of you put in a whole lot more than 5 hours. So thanks to everybody, and you long-term birders, many, many thanks for putting this together. We couldn't do it without you. And I'm really pleased to hear that some of the younger birders are being trained up so that they take our places when we can no longer go out and tromp around. So keep mentoring those younger birders, guys. And with that, if you all want to give, go down to your reactions and give a hand clap. You guys have done a fabulous job. We will see you all at the Bird Festival, or a lot of you at the Bird Festival, and otherwise we'll see you again either out on the field trips or at February's program, which is, again, is Dan Robinette from Point Blue. And I think other than that, I'm going to put a shout out also, if anybody's interested in joining the Carissa Bird Count, get in touch with Kathleen Lynch, because I think she would still accept people coming up and working with her. So, all right, well, have a good evening. Thanks, everyone. Adios.